All right, ladies and gentlemen, assume the position.
Yeah.
Please rise for the NLP Power International Anthem. Think victorious thoughts. Yes, you folks at home, I'm watching your...
I can't stop this feeling deep inside of me. Girl, you just don't realize what you do to me. When you hold me in your arms so tight, you let me know everything's alright. I'm hooked on a feeling.
It's me, Mervin. It's the Sunday.
I'm high on believing that you're in love with me.
Go, Lori, go.
Sweet as candy, its taste is on my mind. Girl, you got me thirsty for another cup of wine. Got a bug from you, girl.
Jojo!
I don't need no cure.
There's Logan getting down. Carrie's rocking the house. Woo!
If I can't
Scott, go!
All the good love when we're all alone. Keep it up, girl. Yeah, you turn me on. I'm hooked on a feeling. I'm high on believing that you're in love with me.
Get these going. Bring it home. Aerobics.
All the good love when we're all alone. Keep it up, girl. Yeah, you turn me on. I'm hooked on a feeling.
Big round of applause.
I'm high on believing.
Welcome to bonus day 5, Killer Influence Las Vegas 2020. The new normal. What's that? The new normal? Nobody ever likes the new normal, but we adapt. And that's one of the biggest characteristics of an agent of influence, is their ability to adapt, to pay attention to what's going on and change as the situation demands, usually proactively. You're going to find that regardless of what side of the moral line you're on, proactivity is essential. You got to roll with the punches, you got to predict, you got to adapt. Right? Read, you adapt, overcome, improvise, right?
Yeah, no shit.
Right. Okay, this is the bonus day, which means it's a buffet, guys. What do you want to learn? Let's start, virtual people, please start typing into the chat what you would like to cover today. And while you're doing that, let's start with the people in the room, and then I'll circle around, and then we'll look at what our curriculum is going to be like today. So bonus day 5. All right, Matthew, what do you want to learn today? What do you talk about?
Ooh, definitely like realizing and understanding when techniques are being used on you.
Understanding when techniques are being used on you.
And then, like, I'm definitely interested in self-hypnosis.
Self-hypnosis?
I don't know about it,
Okay. Because we added a bunch of new material to our standard Killer Influence curriculum, we had to decide what was going to be in this, and then which wasn't. Which, if you notice, your manual is rather thick.
Yeah.
We haven't actually added anything new since we wrote it.
Wow.
Right? Which was 2008. Okay, the stuff that, a lot of the stuff I've covered, you never made it into that manual. It's all stuff we've uncovered, discovered, recovered. And that's why I uploaded a lot of the slides and things like that. For many years, the Killer Influence textbook was the textbook for all of my classes, with the exception of my hypnotherapy trainings. So if you'd come to CPI, you'd get a Killer Influence manual. If you came to CPI, you know, it was just one of those things, because there was so much in it. And that's still kind of how we use it. So when in doubt, if you ask for a manual and there isn't a standard manual for your class, you're probably gonna wind up with a Killer Influence manual, right? David, what do you wanna learn?
I would say maybe some tips on being more of an authority.
Being more of an authority.
Yeah.
I could do that. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Marcus?
You already know. The rapport wars.
Rapport wars. We may start with that today just for fun. Conrad?
Yes, sir. So really the biggest thing for me is over the phone sales. So sales frameworks, processes, pacing and leading. I love the criteria value elicitation.
Dude, you just got everything you needed. You got everything you needed already.
Yeah, I just want to keep going over it. I just want to keep going.
Just
I
keep
love
go-
that shit.
No worries, that's all role play. And you can do that during rapport
Cool,
wars, you
cool.
can do that during pretty much, you can sandwich that into anything.
Yeah.
Because that's a context.
And the autonomizer is, I think, the greatest objection handling
Isn't that cool?
ever. Because I was trying to find, like, I'm all about, like, objection handling preeminence wise, but if it does come up, which I don't even know if it will with the criteria value.
Here's the thing, objection handling only becomes necessary when you've screwed up criteria and values.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I was like,
That's the thing with that, you know, even sleight of mouth. Guys like Ken at Cleveland and some of the other guys, you guys only need to resort to the sleight of mouth stuff when you fucked up criteria and values.
right. So it's really just focusing on that persuasion.
Yeah, when you hit somebody in their criteria and values, their objections go away.
Yeah.
Unless they physically just do not have the money or a way to get to the money,
Right.
they're gonna do it.
Right,
Because
okay.
you're tapping them in their sensitive underbelly. It's really, and what's beautiful about it is, and how this differs from high pressure sales, is you won't get refunds. You won't get buyer's remorse. As long as you've been true to, you know,
It's congruent with what I
they're so fucking happy,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to pressuring somebody into buying so that they'll buy just to shut you up so they can get away and then refund later.
Right.
You won't get that.
Right. Just solicitation, CNV.
And only talk about the things they talk about. The moment you try to gild the lily, 9 out of 10 chances you're gonna screw it up and weaken it. Right? And that's the hardest part, because we want to embellish. We think, well, if they like this, wait till they hear about this. No, that's you.
Yeah.
That's you projecting your own shit. And you'll see it. Don't believe me, go test it. You'll see the lights go off over and over and over again. Robert.
Can you talk a little bit about the differences between running an online session versus in person, like over Zoom?
Sure.
And maybe any super ninja dating technology you haven't taught in a while?
Okay, you realize I've been out of the dating field for like 15 years, right?
I'm sure your ideas have been like just boiling out.
Well, the thing is, you know, technology changes, but humans don't. Right? And so once again, and I'm happy to talk about my theories on it and what I've observed and stuff like that. But like I said, right now, and especially because of the way technology has evolved, anything that stimulates that oxytocin dump is just going to go right to their genitals. I mean, it will. I mean, it'll start at the heart and then it'll go somewhere else, right? And that's the secret is, and because people are not, especially because of the social distancing, all the over-reliance on virtual stuff, their imaginations are just taking them to places that face-to-face challenges wouldn't, which makes it easy for people who understand how to push these buttons. Because when you get in person, the person has you know, if you, it's like if you spent 10 years in Florida and then you go to New York during the fall, you're freezing your nuts off, right? Even though it's like maybe 50 degrees, right? It's the same thing with with in-person connection versus, you know, online connection, is that you become inoculated to having certain feelings in a safe space, you know, and insulated from people. And when you get in a room with somebody, all of a sudden it's like, holy shit. Everything that used to be like just mundane has significantly higher impact subjectively. So these skills are actually even more powerful for you now than they would have been 10 years ago.
Nice.
And they were powerful then. And it's not because the techniques have gotten stronger, it's because people's sensitivities have gotten more enhanced because they're not constantly, it's like your immune system. If you're constantly bombarded by shit, right? Like TJ used to play in septic tanks when he was a kid. He never gets sick now, right? Me, the wind blows, I get sick, right? It's that same idea. If you're not in highly social person-to-person contact, you become sensitive. Your tolerance goes down, for lack of a better word. And that's how I look at it. That's, you know, I could be completely wrong, but usually not. So yeah, so dating. In fact, this might be fun for you. There is an extension that I used to teach. I've taught it like twice, I think. It's called the Intimacy Enhancement Interview. And what it is 36 questions that you tag on to 3 magic questions that takes you from like stranger to wanting to get married in like 90 minutes.
Where's that at, David?
Where's that? Well, I'm telling you what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to let when we get to that, I'm going to let TJ teach it, because he asked me because when we were doing all the conversational frameworks, he was asking me, what would be a great extension for this is your 36 questions. And I said, yeah, but that's really taking us way down the dating rabbit hole that we're not necessarily going for. But since the question, it's a bonus day and you guys want to do that, we'll show you how to work with these questions, why they're important, and what they're actually doing. Okay? Because you can actually download the 36 questions on an app to your phone. But when you plug them into this, the 3 magic questions in the CPI funnel, it's like the prescription for matrimony, right? So be very careful with it as well. Okay? And it's actually scientifically based. These questions were actually developed by scientists to create very powerful pair bonding between complete strangers, so they could study relationship dynamics in a laboratory setting.
Nice. Wow.
And the side effects of what they discovered was that a lot of the people that used these questions actually wound up getting married after the experiment. All right. Well, again, when you see the questions themselves don't really, they seem very weird questions, but what they do is they facilitate intimacy, emotional intimacy, and vulnerability and self-disclosure, and that's what bonds people. And so once you understand how to hack that, then everybody is open to your influence. It's just a question of degree and time after that. And that's really the whole point, is when you understand this whole, this insatiable desire that human beings have for connection, validation, and acceptance. You see people for what they really are. They're just moving through the world looking for that. And anytime they perceive you getting it, they're like moths to a flame. They will not give it up. Okay? Anything else? Yes.
Would it be possible to, every now and then you talk about projecting energy through your voice. Can you describe how the process for that maybe?
It's done through intention, right? I'm a Reiki practitioner, so if I intend to send Reiki through my voice, it will come out that way as opposed to my hands. We can talk about it. I don't know how functional we can make that for you, but it's largely an act of intention. Okay. Holly.
This is incredibly selfish, but
You?
I've always wondered why I've never been prey for a predator, and especially after looking at that list, I mean most of it. So it would be interesting to get enough information for me to be able to
I could almost guarantee I know why. Environment. You're not moving through environments where these people congregate. But that's just a guess. Why don't they pick on me? Okay.
All of the above.
Okay.
And what I'm still working on is how, I don't know if I'm using the right words, to shut down my energy so when I walk in a room, I'm not hearing everybody's mind space and they're feeling their energy. And so it takes me a while to adjust. So I'm trying to, learn to bring it all in.
Okay. We can work with that. Mr. Mask?
Let's see, rapport wars is always fun.
He was asking me about rapport wars too. The minute he heard you say to him, you gotta do rapport wars. You haven't done rapport wars yet. You gotta do rapport wars.
I'm not sure. It sounds cool.
Interview pressure and
I
spirit.
think it's more like just body language.
Interview crusher.
Like some exercises that maintain physical and stuff.
Interview crusher. Kind of already did the interview crusher when you did criterion values. But that's all right.
But combining it with all the other stuff.
So rapport wars, interview crusher, and what else?
Sphere of influence.
Oh, you're pulling out the big guns.
David, do you want the online?
Yes, I do. I'm just about to start them. Thank you for your patience. Hold on a second. Let's see here. It's all good, everyone. More defense against the dark arts, smurfing, and remote influence. That goes to Seth. Yeah, we'll just read it out loud here. Hopefully, I'll remember it. Right? What Paul wrote. More dark arts defense. Oh, and is there something for first thing morning anxiety besides spitting it out every single fucking morning? Yes, regress the cause and fix it finally.
Another workshop.
Yep. Logan, woo my wife when I am home on the evening and nightly. She is tired all the time from loving our 3 little boys daily while I'm at work. Okay.
Hire a maid.
What's that?
Hire a maid.
Hire a maid. That would help, believe it or not.
You don't hire a maid.
Overcoming fear and depression with clients.
I'm gonna ask my wife, like, what's like burning you up? Oh, all the house.
Right now, but I'm sure I want to.
It's a lot of work.
Overcoming fear and depression with clients is more of a hypnotherapeutic application, which again is usually going to be a regress to cause scenario. You can use the big 3 to deal with most of that and nuke it at the source and the reasons for it coming back. But by and large, you're going to wind up having to regress, do some form of regression to get to the source and remove it there. So Lori's saying effectively responding to pitiful attempts at coercion. Laughter usually works really well. Attracting romantic interest from guys who are actually available, i.e. not married players, pimps, or perverts. I'll see what I can do about that. Could we get the 36 additional questions? I've got female clients who really need this stuff. 3 magic questions isn't enough. That's all right. Okay, so it seems there's a lot of emphasis on dating applications, and that's fine. Just remember that 3 Magic Questions is the dating app of choice. Okay, and the reason is because it simultaneously builds connection, trust, attraction, and self-disclosure so that you can sort. One of the things that you got to understand is that if a guy is going to stray outside of his marriage, he's going to stray. Right? And he's going to look for targets of opportunity. And when we, circling back to some of the stuff we talked about, character disturbed individuals yesterday, they're not looking specifically for you. They're playing a numbers game. As far as these types of people are concerned, you are not a person. You are an object to play with. It's like when you go grocery shopping, right? I don't know if you ladies are anything like my wife, but my wife came from mainland China, and selecting vegetables and fruit is like a career path. Right? She'll go up into the fruit aisle and she'll be palpating and squeezing and smelling, right? And there's hundreds of them, right? And what's she doing? She's looking for the one that fits, right? You don't walk, most of us don't do this anyway. Most of us don't walk into the produce aisle and go, that one. Right? We go, nope, nope, nope. That's exactly what these kinds of people are doing. Because as far as they're concerned, you're an object. What you want what your boundaries are don't matter. Are you useful? Do you fit what the mold I'm looking for? That's how they think. So the thing you need to understand is, while you can do, the most powerful set of skill sets you can have is understanding, A, what your boundaries are, how to flag for these people, and how to say fucking no and mean it in a way that they definitively get, not a good idea to fuck with me, right? And sometimes you're going to be wrong. And sometimes people are going to test your resolve, right? Which means sometimes in the process of maintaining your boundaries, you may cross some lines that society or the law doesn't want you to cross, right? So at the end of the day, you've got to own that. Draw your line in the sand, and this is where I begin and you end, right? Because one of the things they're sorting for is the people who give. And you have to understand that the womanizers, and I shouldn't say womanizers, the romantic predators out there, because there's as many women doing this shit as there is men. The romantic predators out there confuse kindness and compassion. Actually, they don't confuse it. They equate kindness and compassion and giving people the benefit of the doubt as weakness. They're predators. Predators go after weak people. This is why these types of people will never admit they're wrong. Because to admit you're wrong is a sign of weakness. The alpha never shows weakness, or they get attacked, or they get challenged, right? We're not talking about the rules of society. We're talking about the law of the jungle. And that's very much how these people operate, right? Now, some sociopaths, some narcissists, they will come right up to the line of the law. Now, their ethics may be all over the fucking map, but they won't cross the legal line. These are the smart ones, right? But if you look at when you profile these people, you'll see a history of broken lives behind them, right? So, in terms of romance, if you're attractive, you're going to get approached. It's just going to happen. And there's going to be guys who, for all intents and purposes, the I do means, yeah, I'll do it right now. But when you're not around, I'm going to do somebody else, right? And so you have to scan for these people, all right? But again, remember that a lot of these people will confuse friendliness as flirtation. And again, sometimes it's a calibration issue. Many times it's just a predator looking for someone who's giving off signs and seeing how rapidly they'll cave on their boundaries. Okay? Question, Robert?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about boundaries. It's a very vague, nebulous concept. Could you give some examples of healthy boundaries or how to form healthy
Well,
boundaries?
unfortunately, healthy boundaries are something that is amazingly personal. But there are certain types of behavior and certain kinds of infractions you'll tolerate to a certain degree, and certain ones that you want. But basically, another way of saying boundaries is rules. What are the rules you have for interacting with people at each level of the social sphere, the public sphere, the social sphere, the private, the intimate sphere, right? What are the things you'll accept? What are the things you won't, right? And how do you know when those boundaries are being crossed? This goes back to, once again, knowing yourself, right? Remember the 3XI model? Identity, intelligence, influence. You got to know who you are. You got to know what you believe in, what you stand for. And sometimes we're so afraid that someone's not going to like us that we'll cave on our boundaries anyway. And that's where the problem comes in, because that goes to that whole emotional need level, which highly neurotic people tend to have, which is why character disturbed individuals sort for people high on the neurotic scale, because they are so worried about not being accepted or about pleasing everybody that they'll happily they won't happily, but they will allow those boundaries to be violated just to be accepted, just to have connection, just to be approved of. Understand? So again, and one of the areas that boundaries become really slippery outside of these whole pathological relationships is within intimate relationships. Because one of the things that happens is we start to identify with the relationship that we have. And as we identify more and more with that relationship, it gains more and more control over us. We lose ourself to the relationship we're in. And this is actually one of the kisses of death when you're actually in a long-term relationship, is that it's intuitive for a man to think, well, she's my mate, I'm gonna do everything that makes her happy. And so we remember her birthday, we remember, you know, we bring flowers, we do all these things that domesticate us. And the problem is that's not who she fell in love with. You understand that? If you want to maintain the spark and desire in the relationship, you must be the person that got her to fall in love with you in the first place. Which means she's looking for the rogue, the lover, the adventurer, the adrenaline rush, right? Those parts of her are still there. But because society has programmed you to take on certain identities at certain phases of your relationship, those parts get walled off. Going back to someone was asking about dealing with their kids. Remember, if you want to have the passion you had when you were dating, you've got to go back to being that person, right? Because for a woman, it's very tough. It's always been tough for women, but you know, in modern society, you know, first they're the date, then the fiance, then the wife, then they're the soccer mom, then they're the PTA president, then they have their own career, and the average woman in a relationship spends 80 to 99% of her day caring about other people's needs. And at the end of the day, there's no more day and nothing left for her. So she learns to compartmentalize and wall off those personas, those aspects of herself. But they're still there. And the biggest predictor of a woman in a long-term relationship to step outside the marriage is actually opportunity. You know, when Mark Cunningham asked, supposedly, 10,000 women if they were given the opportunity to engage in a one-time romantic adventure that would never negatively impact in any way their primary relationship, would they do it? According to him, 10 out of 10 women said yes. Okay? There's no such thing as a married woman. There's only women who got married.
I can't figure out why you would want to do that, because then you have to go back to the grief.
Back to what grief?
Well, if you're not happy in your marriage.
Well, it's not because, you got to understand something. Women are very pragmatic creatures. Okay? Because they're trained, and maybe this is politically incorrect, I don't know, I don't care, I'm just reporting what biology and evolution has to. Women will not jeopardize their primary relationship because the husband is bringing home a paycheck, he's taking care of all of those needs, and their children to think about many times. So they're not going to jeopardize their primary relationship. They'll step out and they'll come back and they'll wall that side of them off and they'll just think about it in those private moments. Yeah. It's just a vacation, right? Now every now and then the vacation is more enticing than the home life, and they'll jump. I call them the lifeboat junkies, because they're looking to jump from relationship to relationship to relationship because they can't fix their own mess, so to speak. But they, you know, if you want to read, you know, some pretty scary stuff, there's a book that's been around for 10, 15 years, I guess now, called Sperm Wars. You know, 10% of all children born in committed relationships were not fathered by the man in that primary relationship. They were fathered extracurricularly. Right? So the sad part of it is that a woman in those situations will step outside, have her fun, come back, and go back to being soccer mom. And she'll be that way. So, you know, you can like what I said, you cannot like what I said. You know, speaking as someone who's been on the other side of the line for a while, I can tell you that that's pretty much the case. The only way, here's the thing. If you approach a woman who is absolutely 1,000% satisfied in a relationship, there is no way you're gonna seduce her. But finding a woman who is 100% satisfied in a relationship is about as easy as finding Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. Okay? And because we all know we're not perfect, and no relationship is perfect. And anybody who tells you that relationship should be easy from the beginning is trying to sell you something, right? So I don't know if that helps or if that confuses the issue, but bottom line, circling back to boundaries, boundaries amount to rules. And sometimes you have to state your rules very, very clearly and very, very overtly. One of the biggest challenges I see as I talk about this, and where I'm starting to see where a big problem might be, is that we're projecting onto the people around us, the people in our relationships. And it's a complex equivalence kind of thing, and NLP would call it a mind read. He says, well, if he loved me, if he cared about me, he would know what my boundaries are. No. No. Because you care about me, you should know me. It doesn't work that way. You're never going to go wrong looking at someone and saying, these are my rules. You know what I'm saying? But we don't. We just hope they intuit what our rules and our boundaries are, and then get shocked when they cross them. People don't know your boundaries. People are not going, if you just accept the idea that people are not going to intuitively know where you draw your lines, and just give them the courtesy of telling them up front, some of them will be offended, and that's okay. Because as long as they're not crossing those lines, they can be as offended as they want. Right? But never feel like you have to apologize for stating your rules. You're going to save yourself a huge amount of grief, because when you state those rules, the first thing that a predator is going to do is cross them. Oh, they'll tell you they'll honor them, and then they'll find subtle ways to infract on them to see what you do. Right? But if you leave those boundaries nebulous, well, you never said that. Right? Well, if you love me, you would know. And now we're back to this. Avoid that bullshit. Get it out and be very, very clear about what's appropriate for you and what's not. And sometimes that might create some awkwardness. So what? At least you're not getting raped. Right? At least that person knows that you're not going to be easy prey. And the thing is you've got to be direct. If you try to hint or sublimate or deflect, that may work a little bit, but in the long run, it's going to come back to haunt you. Okay? Let me see what else we got here. Okay. What Notice said about knowing how to tell if it's my stuff or somebody else's stuff. We can work on that. Internet marketing, how to talk to criterion values to large groups. Should we adapt and generalize since we aren't talking to them face to face? It's actually quite easy, Scott, to do internet, to work, you can't elicit directly people's criteria in a group, but you can adjust your language so that they automatically connect their criteria to the talk that you're giving. And we'll give you a couple primers on how to do that. Carry a cattle prod. If you tell your guys your boundaries, they lie to you and cross your boundaries anyway. Yes, but at least they flag themselves right off the bat, and now you can fight back. Yeah. Is the 36 questions found easily?
Yes.
Yes. It's very easy to find.
Some of them have
right?
50 questions.
Again, I've distilled it down to your choice of any 9. Because 36 is a long fucking date. But anyway, all right. So.
Is that what that doctor uses on
Who?
on that eHarmony website? They have-
Oh, I don't know. Probably. I mean, it's been around for a while.
Yeah.
It's just, and a lot of people created like game apps where you can be on a date and you can pull up this app and you can ask each other questions, and it's actually a great idea. But it reminds me of that whole Monty Python skit where they're having would you like a conversation, sir? Wait till this conversation isn't working, will we get another one? Right? You guys remember that old Monty Python skit?
I'm here for an argument.
Yeah, I'm here for an argument. Yeah, of course he would remember. Right. All right, so again, when you're dealing with, again, predatory psychology says that if I perceive you as weak, if I perceive you as not being able to protect your boundaries, as being overly conscientious and neurotic, you're prey. And it won't matter what you say because you're weak. Predators don't respect weakness. They respect strength. and they don't respect indirect attempts at communication. In fact, they don't respect anyone, but they will obey if the punishment is strong enough. Right? And I have to say this over and over again. You have to be direct, you have to know your boundaries, and you have to vigorously, aggressively, in some cases, when I say aggression, sometimes that's physical aggression, sometimes it's emotional or verbal aggression, sometimes it's actionable aggression, and that means going to a superior, the superior, taking it out. If like, you know, Lori I know is in the military, and her superiors are kind of turning a blind eye. Maybe she needs to step outside the military and go to civilian authorities to get a restraining order against this person. And maybe if she creates enough of a fuss, those things will go away. Right? Now it's easy to say, yeah, but. You do everything you can, and sometimes you succeed and sometimes you don't. But at the end of the day, even if you fail, even if you don't succeed, the fact that you put up a fight, that you put up a struggle, is more healing to your psyche than if you did not. Right? Ultimately, it doesn't really matter if you succeed or not. What matters is that you summoned up everything that you had, and you fought your battle. Right? Yes, we all want to win. Yes, it feels like shit to not succeed. But at the end of the day, the people who fought back, using a rape scenario, the people who fought back against their aggressor were far better off mentally and emotionally than the people who just submitted. Okay? So sometimes you can control the situation, sometimes you can't. But you have to know what is appropriate. And it's always appropriate to push back. You know, as long as you're willing to take the ramifications of that. You know, using the hashtag #MeToo movement as an example. There's a lot of people that did not like what they were asked to do, but they did it anyway because their priorities were different. Right? If you're going to capitulate, you've got to take what comes with that. I don't make the rules. I don't exploit the rules. In this case, I'm just telling you, this is how society is going to look at you. Okay? But what's even more important is how you look at yourself. When you look in your mirror, can you say, you know, maybe I could have done better, but in that moment, that was all what I had. Right? Okay. So, I think what we're going to do is we're going to take a 5 or 10 minute break while I collate all this stuff together, and then we'll look at how to, you know, the most expedient way to hit as many of these points as we can in the time that we have. Does anybody else have anything else they want to talk about or discuss or put on our list?
There's like gaslighting and other types of verbal attacks.
Other types of verbal attacks.
Yeah, like what is gaslighting, red herring?
We're going to cover, we're actually going to cover, if people want to do that, we'll talk about the thinking patterns of these character disturbed individuals so that you can start to realize, and again, you have to remember, going back to our cluster theory. No one habitual thinking pattern means they're a narcissist or a sociopath or a psychopath. But when you see 4, 5, 6 of these traits manifesting over a finite period of time, this is a pretty good indication of what you're dealing with. And depending on how far into your intimate circle you've let these people is analogous to the difficulty you're going to have in removing them, right? So the idea is to flag these people before they become intimate, before they become a regular part of your life, right? And in a dating context, the best tool for that is going to be 3 magic questions. Okay? After that, it's going to be pre-encounter profiling, looking at their social media, looking at Googling them, following up on their LinkedIn profiles, right? And seeing what comes up, because then you can at least begin to extrapolate, you know, by the kinds of lifestyles and associations and groups, right? And there's other things. There's a couple of books I want you to get. One's called Red Flags by Wendy Patrick. Character Disturbance is another good one. Red Flags, Character Disturbance.
Is that fun?
Hold on a second, I'm trying to pull it up here on my sheet. That's not it. some reason, why can't all of a sudden I can't access my Kindle. What's going on? Let's try that again. There's 2 books actually. One is called Character Disturbance. The other is called In Sheep's Clothing. Same author. George Simon. I really like his work because he takes a very radical approach. He says these people are not neurotic. They're not damaged like somebody who's been abused or whatever. These people have divergent patterns of thought. One of the things that he, I think it's in the last chapter of his book, Character Disturbance, he says, these people already understand your point of view, they just don't agree with you. You understand? They understand what society says is desirable, what's okay, what's right, what's wrong. They just don't agree. So when faced with authority or punishment or a therapist, they'll play that card. But it's not about them making them realize the error of they just don't agree with you. They know your point of view. They understand your perspective. They just don't give a fuck. Okay? Because modern psychologists, or current psychological theory says if people can rationally understand why they do what they do, they'll somehow change. Well, these people aren't in that boat because they understand your point of view. They understand why you believe what you believe. They just think you're wrong. You understand the difference, right? So, any sign of weakness, any sign of compliance is giving them encouragement to keep going, right? Okay. So yeah, George Simon, In Sheep's Clothing, Character Disturbance. There's one more that I actually haven't fully read. I think I downloaded it, but I never got it. But it's really, really good in this area of study, and that's called Snakes in Suits. And it's all about sociopaths in the workplace.
There's a lot of those.
Yeah. Oh yeah, a disproportionate amount of them. Remember, many of the hallmarks of sociopathy are actually traits that make good leaders. And that's why you see them gravitating to positions of authority, status, and leadership. Okay? And that's something you need to understand also when you start to profile people. Character disturbed individuals, regardless of what degree they're exhibiting, whether they're the classic narcissist, egotistical womanizer, or female romantic predator, or, Ted Bundy. They're all angling constantly in every relationship for the power position. Everything they do is about jockeying for the power position in a relationship. They're seeking control, dominance. Okay? They're going to do that through brute force, executive power, or emotional vulnerability, emotional addiction, emotional needs. It's all about power and control. So whenever you're interacting with somebody and they're jockeying for the superior position, and you catch that, that should be a flag. Right? If they're always jockeying for a way that they somehow come out being superior, or they position themselves as the victim of circumstances or the victim of jealousy. These are flags and they'll come up really powerfully when you start doing 3 magic questions with people, because when you start getting to that career passion level and the person, you start asking about their jobs and they start telling you about, I work at my dad's firm and one day I'll inherit it, but right now everybody's really pissed at me because I'm the boss's kid and they look down on me because they say I don't work hard enough and blah blah blah. But my day will come. It's all right. Right? And you know what? They'll have a big ass smile on their face telling you all this shit. Right? And because in classical situations, you're actually in rapport with somebody, because narcissists are extremely charming. That's one of their superpowers. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You assume they're telling the truth. Right? They don't flag themselves right off the bat as being character disturbed or narcissistic. Right? But they will happily, in the 3 magic questions protocol, when you're asking about career, they'll talk about shit like that, and they'll be just as happy as if they were talking about how they always loved their father, admired their father, wanted to be just like their dad when they grew up, and couldn't wait to start their own agency. Right? 2 very different mindsets, right? They'll come out, and it'll flag the person. Right? But both of them will be just as happy and become just as attracted to you relating those stories. The question will be, what will you do with that information? How will you process the information that you give them? And what decisions will you make based on how to do that? Or based on the information that they give you? And that's where the challenge comes in when you're doing 3 magic questions, is because there's a rapport that's being built, because you have an inherent truth bias, a lot of times you stop profiling. You stop paying attention to the obvious signs.
Because you're attracted to them already. Oh, so they hooked you.
That's why I constantly tell you, always be testing and have the state control to know when to press the eject button. Right? Okay? Yes?
Is there, when they're trying to get control, or
I'm going to try, give him the microphone because I want to make sure everybody can hear. Okay, okay.
So I was asking, they're trying to gain control, or they gain control. Is there a satisfaction point, or they keep looking for more?
These people,
more
basically,
control?
the more control they get, the more they want. You give them an arm, they take a leg. Okay? There is never enough control as far as these people are concerned. Yes, Marcus?
Sounds like politics.
Yes. Yes. Right? Again, we're talking about humans. And regardless of what you think about government, IT, Google, whatever, they're all run by humans. Right? And so the biases, the idiosyncrasies, the eccentricities, the gaping character flaws that humans have, their tech, their organizations are all going to exhibit to the same degree. Okay? Okay, so let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. We'll come back and we'll start, I'll probably start with rapport wars just because it's a good way to get us warmed up and stuff like that.